So I was like torn for like 3 days. I was like, what do I do? And so finally I just decided, okay, I'm going to take this $70 and I'm just going to invest it in this trip. I'm just going to say, forget this application. But it was on that trip to New York when I got the Forbes opportunity. And so I was just like, okay, cool. Like that risk, like it paid off. Like that was the first time I felt like I invested something in myself and it actually, I got an actual ROI.
Hey everybody, I'm Zeplyn and Rebecca.
I'm Rebecca Franklin.
Welcome to the Soul and Success Podcast, presented by Neo Elite, the show for millennials, featuring top leaders, experts, tastemakers, influencers, and musicians, bringing you the best content about how creating and maintaining a healthy soul leads to success. On today's show, we discuss how to entrepreneur while having a full-time job with Ogden Payne.
Ogden Payne is a contributing writer at Forbes, documenting hip-hop's top entrepreneurs and their business models. He has collaborated on articles with Chance the Rapper, J. Cole's Dreamville Records, Wiz Khalifa, Bryson Tiller, Spotify, and Apple Music. In 2017, he founded the For the Students Tour, a college speaking tour designed to educate students pursuing careers in the entertainment industry.
Ogden, thank you so much for joining us, man.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Word. So I met Ogden, I think late last year at the Revolt Music Conference, and he was hosting, he did a fantastic job hosting a really compelling panel. And then after we connected with Isaiah, who oversees our digital media, man, and just had like a really good day and conversation, man, and kind of, where did we go? What was that? A chicken spot we went to in Miami? It was just like all the rappers was on the wall and Rick Ross and Future. It was a really good like chicken spot like in the hood where they were like, protect yourself. But
yo, do you remember? Okay, real quick, do you remember the security guard afterwards? The dude was wearing Yeezys.
Oh, you're right. He was.
Remember that?
Yeah,
I'll never forget that.
Yeah.
And then I remember he was like, make sure you got all your stuff now.
Right.
You got all your stuff because you know it ain't. And then I looked down, the dude had some Yeezys on. And he was.
It definitely reminded you of like a scene from Atlanta. Like it,
1,000%.
It was.
Yeah.
So he's in town now hosting a panel for Broccoli City, and he stopped by to chat with us. So thank you so much for being here again with us, man.
Yeah, thank you.
So this first segment is called Mood, just because, we allow it to set the tone, the vibe, and the energy of the conversation. Usually I read the quotes, but I feel like I'd be doing the audience a complete injustice by trying to read these two people because only they could really do them like them. So the first person we have up, she's got the Midas touch right now, Benderella, Cardi B. She was on Ellen, and she had something to say about, this conversation that we're going to be talking today about, having a job, but, wanting to be an entrepreneur. So I'm going to let this clip play first, and then we'll get into the next one.
For sure.
But I just gave up on my dream because it's like, I felt like, music is not paying my bills.
Right. So, and that's when you became a stripper?
Yes.
Okay. And how long did you do that?
I did that for 19, 20, 21, like three and a half years.
3 years. And did you like it? Did you
Hell
hate
yeah.
it? You...
I did.
Tell me why.
I mean, a lot of people want me to be like, oh, I hated it. I don't recommend it to nobody. I don't recommend it to everybody because it's not for everybody. But it made me money. It paid my bills. It got me my own apartment. It got me my boob job. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I had about $20,000 when I was 20 years old already. And it just helped me a lot,
Yeah. But then how did you make the transition then from that to rapper?
I did the transition because it's like I started getting a lot of money, and the money I made, I used it to invest in my dream.
In yourself?
Yes, in my dream.
So that was the first quote that we have from Cardi B. The next one that we have is from the one and only Dame Dash from a Breakfast Club interview a few years back. And this absolutely needs no introduction. The co-founder, Rockefeller Records, and the special Dame Dash. So we'll let this one play.
Because you're on the radio and this message is crazy to me. You're saying because you enjoy music or being a DJ, you enjoy having a boss. If you enjoy being a DJ, just why don't you own your own radio station and then DJ for your own radio station so your son can just get on anytime he wants? That's all I'm saying.
But it's steps to it, though.
No, there's no steps to it because I do it. See, you enjoy the safety and the security of a job every day. But there's no pride in that to me. My son takes pride. My kids take pride in the fact that I have Dash Motors. And because I have that, my son said, I'm not going to ever have a boss. His mentality is different. It's just about changing mentality.
Now, let me ask you a question. There's millions of people out there that don't have that opportunity and
all have the opportunity.
a boss every day. So you basically saying because they have a boss, there's no pride in it?
I think because people on the radio tell people it's okay to have a boss, they don't understand that they can have more. And because of the direct-to-consumer relationship, the internet, there's no excuse.
All right, so let us get into it. I mean, I think that we have very interesting perspectives that they have both brought up. A lot of times, you know, as young adults, we are and trying to figure out what it means to be an entrepreneur. How do you fund this thing? How do you get into it? Cardi's like, I kind of gave up on that for a minute, stacked my paper, then invested. Dame's like, from the jump, I'm not working for nobody. I'm getting right into it.
Yeah.
So how do y'all feel about this?
Man, you know what? I see both sides.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I really do. On Cardi's end, you got to pay your bills, right? Like you have to survive. So like I started off as a rapper. That was my thing.
Really?
Like, yeah. When I was 17, like sports had kind of died down. Like I realized I wasn't going pro in anything, unfortunately.
Okay.
So then like a friend of mine, he put me on to the College Dropout.
Okay.
And I just remember I listened to the whole album and I was just like, I felt something that you know. And then I was like, I want to be able to invoke that same feeling in others, you know? So yeah, I started off as a rapper. That was like my main thing. I was a senior in high school and I went to the studio. I was like the first person in our high school to like ever go to a studio. And so like recorded like a little demo or whatever and like ended up passing it around school.
Word.
So like that was
Hustling.
my thing. I really pursued that heavy. But it wasn't until probably, I think I was 22, 23 is when I got the opportunity to write for Forbes. But the opportunity to write for Forbes came from essentially pitching the editor at Forbes my music all the time. Like that's how it came
Really?
about. Yeah. So yeah, man. So I understand what Cardi's saying. Like I wanted to rap. I wanted to make my life happen for myself, but like rapping wasn't paying the bills. So, you know, I took jobs at, let me see, I think I worked at Old Navy and then I worked at Abercrombie and Fitch and then I worked at both at the same time. And then I was going to school at the same time too.
Yep.
And then for a while I worked at a library. I interned for the Recording Academy and they put on the Grammys every year.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, I had a whole bunch of jobs.
Just trying to figure out.
Yeah, just trying to figure out what I was
in order
doing.
to support the rapping.
Yeah, like I wasn't doing the drugs, like selling drugs. Like that wasn't my life, you know? So I was like, man, I got to figure out some legitimate way to fund this, you know? And my parents, they didn't have, you know, the cash to give it to me. And, you know, my mom was like, if you're not going to invest money in yourself, how are you going to ask somebody else to invest in you? So
Absolutely.
like I've, you know, I just believed in that wholeheartedly. So I just always had to get a job, you know? So yeah. So I understand what she's talking about. But then at the same time, like, you just got to go out there and do it. You know what I mean? Like, you can't just be, like, there's never going to be, like, that perfect time. So, like, I see what Dame is talking about, and I respect it, but I think that's not, like, not everybody has that go-get-it mentality. And some people need a little bit more of a push to get in it, you know?
And I mean, she's an interesting case because she talks about making a lot of money. Like another interview I heard her say, she had like $80,000 at one point, just like stashed from stripping and club appearances. She was like, I was going to invest in hair salons and hair stores, but then she was like, no, I always said I wanted to be a rapper. So she invested in like her career.
Yeah.
But a lot of the times people get stuck, you know what I mean, in the job and making that money because I'm sure she didn't come out the gate just making straight bread.
That's what happens to a lot of people, right? Like, you'll go to college and you'll have, like, you know, when you graduate, you're like, yo, I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to do this. But then life hits you, right? Like, for some, it's student loans are coming in 6 months. For others, it's, I just got to get a job. I got to, you know, and then you get caught up in the, dang, I just got more money than I've ever had in my entire life. You know, this is my first check at a real job, you know, and then you just kind of fall into that.
Yeah.
You just fall into that. And then all of a sudden you look up and you're married, you got kids, and you're like 35 years old and you haven't done what you said you were going to do, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's validity in both things. You could argue both are not relatable to average people because, I mean, stripping is not for everybody.
Yeah,
no matter who you are,
try.
like,
Not
you know?
endorsing
wanted to,
stripping.
yeah,
Right,
not
yeah,
endorsing
like-
it, but for sure.
It's not for
Yeah.
everybody, you know, from a psychological, emotional, and mental standpoint. Not everybody can survive that situation, right?
Yeah.
And the money is different than if someone was just working, you know, a normal job. You're probably not taking home $80,000, like, without a
Not even in a
degree.
year.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
without a lot of other check marks being there, which also take time and money. But I think one of the most interesting things to me that stood out about Dame Dash is, like, going forward in, like, working for someone else and it not being a prideful thing or you not being able to do it, but doing it on your own takes a lot more energy. There's a lot more going into it, which if you're working for someone else, you're spending half the energy. You're just focused on your job a lot of the time instead of thinking about doing every single job until you can afford to hire people or you can afford to, do things like that. To me, like, as somebody who owns their own thing and, like, self-invest, it's hard because now I do work a full-time job for money, and the money is nicer than when I went right out of college and did everything I wanted to do, There's
and
security
I think,
in that.
For sure. And I think Dame is speaking to two different audiences. The way I interpreted it was, if you're a certain age, you shouldn't be working for somebody, right? I think that's kind of also what he was saying. But for a lot of young people, you need to work for somebody. Like, you have to have that structure. I've interviewed people and I've just seen, like, rappers who come out of the gate and they're like 18, 19 and they really never had a job. They don't know what structure looks like. They don't know what authority looks like. I mean, that's just a detriment to their career, right? So I think when you're of a certain age and you're at that age, like that malleable age where you kind of need somebody to tell you what to do, I think working for a boss will help you. I think Dame was kind of saying, like, yo, if you're 35 and you want to be an entrepreneur, just go out and do it. Don't work for anybody. You know what I mean?
Right. And there's a certain amount of capital, I think, that comes with, once you're a certain age, you should probably be hitting a few benchmarks there with, you might have, like, at least work experience, or you might have at least some financial something put away.
Though he was saying his son, who's 23, I don't know if you all like saw that full interview, like, owned the cookies. Like, he was like, my son
has cookies.
My son has cookies, and his son was like 23, and he was like, I mean, granted, like, he has the infrastructure of his father behind him, right? But he was like, my son hustled in order to do those things, and he started Rockefeller at like 23, 24.
Right.
And also said that, like, he never worked for anybody a day in his life.
Right.
And so, like, I think that
some people come from that fabric, you know, and I think in the African American community, like, that generational feeling of entrepreneurship, for some people they have it, for some people they don't, you know? And I think for Dame, he probably just had that in him. I think for a lot of other, young African American entrepreneurs, you don't have that in you, you know, like, sometimes you just don't have that dog eat dog mentality that you need, you know? And I think he just had different experiences that caused him to be like, nah, I'm gonna do this on my own. Some people just don't have that.
I think this is good too, right? Because I think we can actually talk about the mindset of an entrepreneur, right? Because I think that even Cardi still had that. Like, she's always was like, I'm going to make money either way. I don't know what you define stripping as, if that's like an entrepreneurial sort of thing. But, like, even with the money she made, she was like, I was going to invest it into something.
Right.
So I do think that, like, overall what they share is that mindset of an entrepreneur. So, like, can you talk about, in your own experiences, and even in what you do with your own ventures, like, what that mindset of an entrepreneur looks like for you and what you kind of have seen need to be kind of like, those go-to sort of things that you have to have if you're going to be doing any level of entrepreneur, whether you have a job or not?
Yeah. I think it really takes just this mentality of, like, regardless of what happens, regardless of the no's, regardless of the yeses,
right,
I'm gonna get this done. Because when I was younger, I think I wanted to be an entrepreneur because I liked the idea of it, because Jay-Z was an entrepreneur, and I used to just really look up to Jay-Z. I didn't really know what it meant. When I was in high school, we had these, I think they were called, like, pathways or whatever, and you could choose, like, the business pathway or the fine arts pathway, the entrepreneurial pathway, whatever. So I chose entrepreneurial pathway because I was like, well, that's what Jay-Z does.
Right.
But I didn't really know what it took, right? Like, I was a really kind of like a quiet kid around, like, my senior year. I didn't really speak up much. I didn't really, And I remember one time my mom was with me, and this guy was talking a whole bunch of stuff, and I think he was, like, trying to charge me something. And I remember, like, I ended up paying it, and I walked away, and I was just, like, really frustrated with having to pay it. And then my mom was like, when are you going to speak up? Like, when are you going to fend for yourself? Because, I'm not going to do it anymore. Like, and if you're not going to do it for yourself, nobody else is going to do it. And it was like, at that moment, I just decided, I was like, man, like, it just clicked for me, And I think just that mindset of just having, like, I have to rely on myself. I hate that, because I do think you need somebody on your team, be it, your significant other or your mother or, just a best friend, who can kind of balance out your crazy ideas with you. But like, I think at a certain point, you have to have this confidence within yourself that like, regardless if my venture looks like what I thought it was going to look like in the beginning, I'm going to see it through. And I think seeing it through, a lot of people just don't have that in them. Sometimes it's not a natural thing. For me, it wasn't natural. Like, you know, starting and finishing something.
Yeah. How'd you develop that? Or how do you continue to work on that, you know, each and every day?
I think that goes back a little bit, right? My parents always told me I need to be a man of my word, right? And for me, if I tell myself I'm going to do something, me being a man of my word is, okay, Ogden, you said you're going to do this, well, then finish it, you know? And I think that's kind of where it comes from. It's just making a promise to myself and saying, okay, I'm going to get it done. Because if I don't get it done, then I'm like, well, I lied to myself and I wasted my own time. And, you know, I think that's kind of where it comes from.
No, absolutely. I think you can kind of self-motivate and self-drive to be like, I want this. This is the way to get this.
Yeah.
As simple as that. But for a lot of people, I think there's so many different ways to get to a certain point now that didn't used to be open. So now you can really, you know, if you want to self-invest in your music, like, that's how most people get put on.
1,000%.
And it didn't used to be the case. You know,
Right,
you had
like-
to wait till somebody looked at you and was like, come to the studio, you know, right?
Like 10 years ago, it had to be like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 1,000%. And I think also I knew what I wanted to be. Like I knew I wanted to be, regardless of what the career was, like if it was a rapper or like whatever, like I knew from a young age I wanted to be a professional something. When I was playing basketball, baseball, I knew I wanted to be a professional at it. And like when kids would be on the baseball team and be like, oh, well, I want to end up being a dentist or a doctor, whatever, I would be like, well, then why are you wasting your time playing baseball? Like, just go do that, you know? So I always had this vision of like being successful at whatever I was going to do. So there was nothing that was going to deter me from doing that. And I think that kind of aided in the mindset of like, okay, I'm just going to go out here and do it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another good segue, though. Now, those same kids, they grow up, they graduate college, and maybe they want to get into a job and they can't get into it for whatever reason. Not enough openings, they don't have the right connections, you know. And so they now have to go work a job that they don't necessarily like or they're not passionate about in their field. How do you now maintain that energy if you do want to be a rapper or you want to be a event planner, but you have to go do a day job that, you know, is sucking up 8 or 9 hours of your energy just to pay your bills?
Yeah, yeah.
Right? How do you do that?
That's tough, man. It's tough. That's the thing, though. Like, it's tough.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like, regardless, like, are you going to do it or not? Just because you are you, and just because somebody may have told you along the line, like, you're a special snowflake or whatever, that doesn't mean that the doors are going to be open for you to do whatever you want. You know, I was fortunate enough to have, you know, a mother who instilled, and a father who just told me, like, you know, you can do this. You can make it happen. That didn't mean that I was already qualified to do it. It just meant that, like, you know, I had the foundation at home to have that confidence in myself. That's why I think people who come from just impoverished neighborhoods or just difficult backgrounds are so much more advanced in life than anybody else, because it's like all the cards were stacked up against you,
Right.
and you made it out.
Yeah.
You know, like I think the people who have the privilege, they have this false sense of entitlement and this false sense of, oh, well, you know, my parents told me I can do this and I got straight A's here and I could do, you know, and you think that that's what it's going to take to build you up. And it's just, that's just not true. That was a lesson for me, you know, like I thought because someone told me I was special, you know, I got a good GPA. I thought, well, why isn't this
The
happening?
world was just supposed to open up.
Yeah,
for you.
people
That's just
tell
not
you
the
when you
reality
graduate
at
high
all.
school, the world is your oyster. Go make what you want out of it. And then you wake up the next day and you're like, yo, so how I'm supposed to do this?
Right,
You know what I mean?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
No, that's a
Yeah,
valid
there's
point.
kind of like no guides,
Yeah.
really. Even words and guides sometimes, a lot of things are just experience-based. Like
1,000%.
some things you just need to experience. Like no matter what is happening, I think people just have to experience it. And it might take working that job that is not your favorite thing in the world. Or it might take doing your favorite thing in the world full-time to be like, oh, the money is now the thing that I'm more passionate about
Right.
at this very moment.
right.
I've been through that. I think we've all been through that, where it's that our generation has a very big decision to make. A lot of the times coming straight out of high school is the passion versus being able to survive long enough to, you know, live that without limitations and fully. Because like when my mom was growing up, she was a waitress and she could make rent in a day.
Yeah.
And like that is not a thing that I can make my rent in a day, but like if I do session work or if I'm recording or something, I could technically, but that's so many things in the making to get there. So I think for me, You just gotta really know what you very much want and know what is going to alleviate those stressors so that you can focus on it.
So this next segment is called What's Really Good. And, the reason why we call it that is because we allow it to go deeper on kind of the conversation and really talk about what this thing looks like on a super practical level. And so where I want to go here is the idea of risk management, and the risk element for entrepreneurs, especially when you have a job, because that mindset of an entrepreneur is that you're always in go mode. Once you've kind of established that thing that you know you want to do, you're always thinking about it, you always want to work on it, you always kind of have these opportunities. But if you have a job, you have committed a certain portion of your energy to that space. And so you can't necessarily, be giving all of your attention to what you do while you have an actual job. And so there's kind of like, a risk in that. And obviously being an entrepreneur within and of itself is a risk. And then now you kind of have another one if, you're working a job. I'm a full-time entrepreneur, and I know that because of myself, I kept getting fired from jobs because I was always working on what I wanted to do. And it was just like, yeah, you're really into this entertainment and media thing. You should just go do that. Because it was like, I just couldn't really focus on anything else, right? So, which isn't necessarily the best thing for people. So how do you think about that idea of what you give your time and energy to in that risk of being an entrepreneur while having a day job?
Yeah, no, you know what? I'm the same way. Like I realized pretty early on, I'm just not good at working for other people. It's not that I don't want to, but I just realized I just wasn't good at it. If I worked at Abercrombie & Fitch or Old Navy, I don't know, for some reason I just could not get the flow of it, and people were like, yo, this is easy. Why? And I couldn't get it, you know? Again, it wasn't because I didn't want to be good. Well, I don't think I really wanted to be. I didn't really want to. I just have a really hard time achieving what somebody else's standard of success is. I just have a really hard time doing that. But I just put up with it until I felt like, okay, I just cannot do this anymore. Like the last job that I had was working in a library, which I loved. So I started working at a library. And then I think it was like a couple months later, then I had the opportunity to write for Forbes. So I kept the library job because I was like, well, I don't really know what the Forbes checks will look like in the future, So then when I started getting, a little bit more familiar with what I could do with Forbes and, I got a little bit more confident, it was a year after I started the job at the library, I just decided, you know what, I'm going to do this Forbes thing full time. That was the biggest risk of my life because I was just like, man, like, I don't really know if this is going to pan out, but it did, and it worked itself out. Now, was I immediately like thrust into like the multi-million-dollar mansion or like whatever? Like, nah, like that just wasn't it. But I was so much more at peace with what I was doing than, working in a library. In college, you have this feeling of, man, I just want to get out of here and I just want to do my own thing. I don't need to graduate. I don't need to do that. And I think you got to see it all the way through, personally. I don't know if we have time for like a story or whatever, but one of the big risks that I had was, so I've been in community college for like 5 years, which was 3 years, way too long. So I was in community college and it was finally time for me to transfer to a university. So I applied for Texas State University, which is about like 45 minutes outside of Austin. And I got in and that was no problem. But then I had another application for the University of Texas, which is a little bit more established. There's a little bit more, prestige behind it, whatever. And I had actually talked to I think it was like one of the advisors there. And she was like kind of going over my transcript and some stuff. And she was like, you should really look at applying because I think, you might have a chance of getting in. And of course, like being an African-American and in this really prestigious college, like that would be great. I'm sure my parents would be, super excited. So I was like, all right, well, I'll look at it. But then the application fee was like, I think $70. And at the time, that was like a lot. So I had the application and I was looking at it and I was like, okay, maybe I'll do this. But then at the same time, I was planning this trip to New York, right? And because I think I had a show up there or something. So I was planning this trip to New York.
Like legit rapper.
Oh yeah, no, like I was like moving. Like there's no like Spotify, like I was like moving.
Word.
I was like
is the music
Peter,
still up there? Can we?
I think it is.
Okay.
Yeah. Like I was like, yo, Peter. Like I met Peter Rosenberg one time at South by, and I like.
What was your rap name?
Okay, so the first one was Baby Boy. We don't need to.
Fair.
Yeah, we don't.
Okay.
That was what happened was my aunt, she kept calling me baby. Anyway,
Babyface
was taken, so I had to go to Baby Boy.
Okay.
And then the other one is just Ogden Payne.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Right,
So
right.
yeah, I had this trip planned in New York, and I was like, man, like I had this dilemma. I was like, okay, I can either take the $70 and I can put it into this application, or I can take the $70 and I can invest it into this this career that I want. And my parents were they didn't really care where I got my education from, but I think the rapping thing, they were like, all right, bro, like what are you doing, right? So I was like torn for like 3 days. I was like, what do I do? And so finally I just decided, okay, I'm going to take this $70 and I'm just going to invest it in this trip. I'm just going to say, forget this application. But it was on that trip to New York when I got the Forbes opportunity. And so I was just like, okay, cool. Like that risk, like it paid off. Yeah. Like that was the first time I felt like I invested something in myself, and it actually, I got an actual ROI. Wow. Like, you know what I mean? Right. So yeah, I think as far as taking risk, like you're going to take a billion risks, but you just need that one that's going to give you the confidence to keep going.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Would you say that in starting your own thing, that you were able to pull a lot from where you're working right now, or was this always something where you knew, all right, I kind of want to do this, or was it because you were at Forbes, you were like, I want to start this thing to be able to show other people like
the For the Students tour?
Yeah.
It was a combination of things, right? So when I was in school, I was at a community college, and they had a music business class or whatever, or I think it's a music business degree that you could get. I remember I was so thirsty for knowledge, and I was so hungry for the knowledge at the time. It still am, but like I was just so new to everything. And I think we had like a couple guest speakers in there, and I just didn't relate to any of them. They were like, oh, well, this is how you do stuff for your band. And I'm like, yo, I'm not in a band. Like, I don't, like, this is me. It's me. This is it. Ain't nobody else in this. I just felt like I didn't relate to anybody, And so I just felt like I had a really great opportunity. Like, I was blessed enough to have this opportunity to write for Forbes while I was in college.
Wow.
Not everybody gets that, especially those who are passionate about whether it is journalism or it is rapping or whatever it is. Not everybody gets that opportunity.
Absolutely.
So I was like, okay, how do I essentially take what I wanted and then take the resources that I have and put them together to hopefully help the next generation, not even the next generation, but just help the next person who wants to get involved in this, like some people just don't have access to things. And I think for me, I was blessed enough to live in Austin where it is a musical city, even though it's not best for hip hop, I would say, I still had access to things, I was still able to kind of meet people. There's a kid who probably lives in like Iowa. Actually, I know a kid who lives in Iowa, and he wants to get on and he wants to do stuff, but he's just not around anything. So I was like, okay, well, how can I bring what I know, and how can I bring kind of the access to the industry to somebody who doesn't necessarily have it,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for a lot of people, the apprehension when it comes with either splitting time or splitting financial security or splitting energy or whatever it is in entrepreneurship, because that risk is daunting, because it could be the difference of, do you have a place to sleep, right?
Yeah.
In some cases. Or for other people, it could just be like, is this going to sit well with me later on? Like, am I betraying whatever's inside me, to do whatever it is? But it seems like for you, it's very personal. It was always something that you kind of felt and wanted to be a part of.
Yeah.
So I think that makes the risk a little bit easier because you've lived it. And
and I think I was also, again, just super blessed enough to have a mother who, I don't know if she fully understood what I wanted to do, but she just embraced it and she supported me regardless. So it made the risk a little less scary, because it was like, if all else fails, my mom is still going to support me in some type of way. Again, some people just don't have that. I was blessed enough to have it. So for those who maybe, the risk is a little bit more riskier, I don't know if I'm the best guy to answer the question, but for those who do have some type of backing, like, you just got to rely on that. You just got to rely on what you have and just.
But I think that you are, though, because, we haven't like pulled it out specifically, but I am now. It seems like you always had at least some level of a plan, right? Like you weren't just kind of like throwing the ball in the air and being like, well, I don't know where this is going to land. Maybe because you didn't necessarily know fully how to navigate it, but you still kind of had like some direction that you wanted to go in.
Yeah.
So the fact that you even were like, you had a trip to go to New York for whatever reason in order to pursue your career. You had a plan of trying to chase something. I think that that's super important, whether you have that backing or not, that you need to have some level of a plan. Like,
that's true.
Even if you have the capital, if you don't have a plan, it's a bunch of people that have capital that blow
through it
because they don't have a plan for what to actually do with it.
1,000%. And you know what? And I think to kind of speak on that, like, because I always told myself, even when I was 17, I was like, okay, if nothing pops for me as a rapper or whatever, by the time I'm 25, I'm going to do something different. And I never wanted to be a rapper over 30. I didn't want to do it forever. Yeah. I just wanted to do it so I could leverage. I wanted to be like Jay-Z. I just wanted to use rap to leverage other stuff,
Absolutely.
To do other things. And I guess in a sense, I was able to do that just on a smaller level, but.
You're still very young, so,
I guess.
You got time, man.
I guess. Yeah.
How old
are
you?
25.
Right, so
I'm at the age.
So Jay's first album hasn't even come out yet.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? And I do use that as like a measurement. I advise everybody, because I was the same way, and I actually just did this recently. And I think a lot of people are like, man, like, I just need an investment. I just need this. Yeah. I need $10,000 to do this. And it's like, if somebody gave you $10,000 or whatever your investment was, $20,000, I guarantee you wouldn't know what to spend that on. And you wouldn't even know how to make half of that back.
Absolutely.
So I advise everybody, like, if somebody...
You done blew somebody money.
Yeah, you done blew somebody money and now they mad at you.
Right.
Boy, that don't make no type of sense,
exactly.
Man. So yeah, I advise everybody, just if you just make plans. Like if you had $5,000, what would you do with that?
Mm-hmm.
If you had $10,000, what would you do with that?
Very
If you had 15, what would you do with that? Make it all the way. Whatever the number that you want. It you can build it out like that. But and then I think also it's like, okay, people are like, man, I need a manager, or I need somebody to work with me. I need a marketing director. I need this. And it's like, no, what you need to do is, okay, you create a plan for what can I do by myself?
Yep.
Okay, now if I had somebody to do something else with me, what would I be able to accomplish with them? Like, what would be that goal? And then if I had 2 people working with me, how would I be able to accomplish it? And then you build it out to a team of like 10 people. And then you have a little bit more of a vision.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people just say, oh, I need this, just because whatever they're doing on their own isn't popping.
And to that point again, because I'm sure that you've heard artists come up to you and be like, I need a manager, and you only got like 100 followers on social media, or somebody may be doing something. They'll be like, yo, like, I see Zep, you have a team of people. How do you have a team? And really, like, what I think people have to understand is that, like, you have to have something to actually give to people.
Right.
You have to be able to add some level of value. Once you have a team, you don't work for yourself. Like, you're working to, like, help your team grow.
Right.
And whatever that looks like, that may be.
Right.
So you have to actually really have something to give to people that is going to help grow them.
Right.
Like, you can't just want a whole bunch of people around you and you have nothing to offer.
Yeah. And I think people misconstrue the thought of being a quote unquote boss. I think a lot of people think that other people are working for them.
Yeah.
Right? You think that, oh, people are going to come to me for advice. I'm going to be the one who's telling everybody how to. It don't work like that, bro. You are the last one on the totem pole.
Yeah.
Honestly. That's really how it is.
No, it
like,
is.
Literally, like you said, like, you work for everyone else.
Yeah.
Like, do you really want that stress of waking up in the middle of the night, 3 a.m., and the thought of your most valuable team member leaving?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, if that happens, what are you going to do? Like, that's a stress. Like,
Really?
That's what, and a lot of people don't think of that.
No.
And I think, you see this glamorized perception of what a boss is, and they seem untouchable, and they see, because you watch the interviews, and the interviews are glossy. The magazine covers look nice.
Yeah. The vulnerability is real.
Oh, it's so real. It's so real, and it's so fragile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just to kind of wrap this section up and kind of really take out some key takeaways that we've talked about, number one, you just kind of have to get it done no matter what. You kind of have to have that mindset. You got to see things through. Be clear on what you want. You're going to have to take risk at some point. There's never going to be that perfect time.
So our last section is called It's a Vibe. So we're kind of closing up with what gets you focus, efficiency, and you're a music guy.
Yeah.
So I would personally like to know, what are you listening to? What is helping you? What is motivation music? What is music at the end of a long day?
Yeah. So actually, you know what? Music Soul Child. He has this song, it's called Future. And it's just like, if you listen to the lyrics and you listen to the hook, I'm not going to sing it. I mean, essentially, he's just telling you, don't give up on your dream. You don't listen to what other people are having to tell you. I mean, it sounds very cliche, but if you listen to how he uses his harmonies and his melody, it's super inspirational. So definitely Music Soul Child. Nice for what right now? Like, it's my, like, I don't know why that gets me, like, I'm like, that's an anthem for me, bro. I'm like, I know this is like supposed to be an anthem for like the ladies or whatever. I'm like, bro, this is for me.
That's the motivation.
Yeah, this
music.
is the motivation for me.
Rebecca, what about you? What gets you hyped, motivated?
When I'm doing my own thing, I'm a musician, so I don't listen to new stuff. Like anything after 79, I don't listen to if I'm writing. If
Like
I'm
1979?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's like before Thriller.
Well,
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I didn't know that.
Just for like particular projects. But for some things, I will pull from like other genres. So like one of the bands I'm in is like very much alternative rock, like indie rock. So there's a lot of like obscure things that I'll listen to. But when I'm in the recording process, kind of anything goes. So when I'm in my entrepreneurial, this is what I see for myself, I don't look to a lot of people just because I want to get all of my stuff out first, like all of my own thing without any influence. That wasn't there before I did music full time. So that's kind of what I'm on. But right now, Janelle Monáe's new album just came out yesterday.
Yeah.
So for those tuning in right now, it is the day after Dirty Computer came out, and that is the only thing on my radar.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah. What about you, Zach?
Yo, I'm like down south, Rose, like
People sleep on Rose.
Yo, they sleep on Ross.
Oh my god.
Like
Bro.
really, like all of MMG for real. Like Meek. I'll even
Gunplay.
give
Let's be
Gunplay.
real.
Yeah.
Stolly. I mean, but
like like Wale too in parts, but like really like when I'm like trying to get in my bag, like or like I'm just like going through, I'm like I need to get back. Like I'm like Rose, Meek, Gunplay, like Khaled as well. Like Khaled comes with those like motivational hits, anthems. We taking over. What was the other joint? Like all I do is win.
Oh, win, no matter what. Yeah,
I mean all the joints he comes out with, like Shine. Like I just like that is my. But really Rose. It's like I could just put on Ross. Like the way that he is so confident in himself. Like I don't understand how you can't listen to that and just be confident.
Yes,
in you.
I
Like,
tell people that all the time.
Rose
I'm like,
is
yo,
so
he
underrated.
speaks to the entrepreneur.
Yeah.
He speaks to the entrepreneur.
No, he does.
Like the
Yeah, he
dad,
does.
like the entrepreneur. That's who he speaks to.
Entrepreneur,
And like I feel it every day, bro.
Yep.
Every day. Yes.
Yeah.
Praises to Ross,
Yeah,
bro.
Rose doesn't get the credit he
He
deserves.
doesn't, bro.
doesn't.
And I think, you know what? And I think that goes back to also like tying into the thread of an entrepreneur, like just surrounding yourself with entrepreneurial ideas or like music or whatever. Like hip hop that is I came from nothing and I'm something now.
100%.
You know, and I think when you're like of that culture and you're bred of that culture, it instills something in you.
It does.
I agree with you 100%.
It's like early Jigga, like all the, you know what I'm saying? Like RD is like I think that whenever like I'm about to like do some level of a business deal or something, I put on something from Reasonable Doubt. Like something for like
Can I Live? It's Can I Live. For me, it's Can I Live.
Can't Knock the Hustle, like
Bro.
Dead Presidents.
Oh
like,
my
one of
goodness.
those, I'm
Yes.
just like, all right, cool. Let me get in that mindset.
Yeah, let me get in this. Yo, I'm about
right.
to Don Corleone these dudes out here.
Yep.
Yeah, what's up? Yeah, I feel you.
All that, man, is fantastic. But Ogden, thank you so much for
thank you,
know,
man.
for joining us, man. This is a fantastic conversation.
We just like to end it on you giving your own take on what soul is. So you kind of complete the sentence. So you will say soul is, but whatever it is to you. So what is soul to you?
Soul is purpose. Soul is confidence. And soul is having a little bit of sauce.
And tell us really quickly, where can people find you? Where can they check you out? You know, how can they be supportive?
Yeah.
Let everybody know.
So you can check me out at Ogden Payne. That's OGDEN PAYNE. That's on like all socials. And then at For the Students Tour on Instagram. So For Students Tour, all one on Instagram.
Perfect.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much, man.
All right. Thank you, guys.
I want to give a huge thank you to some of the folks who work on this podcast with us. Audio engineer Jarrell Bradley and sound mixer China Holmes. We wouldn't be able to do it without you.